Welcome to Empire State of Grind, a podcast about the people building the next wave of tech startups in and out of New York City. Please be advised that while the hosts of this podcast are practicing lawyers, some of the guests on this podcast may be clients of the hosts, and the information and content provided during this podcast are for informational purposes only and should not be construed as legal advice or as the positions or stances of the employers of any of the individuals.
Welcome to another episode of Empire State of Grind, the show where we learn about the people building the next wave of tech startups in and out of New York City. I'm your host, Aaron Fisher, and today I'm joined by co-host Kieran Bath, and our guest is Jonathan Warrick, VP of Operations at DVO1. DVO1 is an all-in-one data management, reporting, and analytics platform that brings transparency and insight to the lending markets. What makes Jonathan such a great guest is that, like both myself and Kieran, he had a non-linear journey into his various roles in tech. Even cooler, he was the very first employee at DVO1 and has been there for their journey from seed stage startup through their acquisition in 2022. He remains there as a key contributor, and we will learn about his journey and how a popular TV game show has played a prominent role in his career. Jonathan, thank you for coming. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So to start out, I guess tell us a little about like DVO1, what do you guys do, and give us some sense of like company size, whatever metrics make sense to you.
Yeah, sure. So DVO1 is a data company that provides analytics and reporting in the fixed income space. Basically, when you or I go out to get our mortgage, we buy something with a credit card, we go get an auto loan, we refinance our student loans. What a lot of people don't know is that all of those loans basically get packaged up and then they are sold to institutional investors. They're basically packaged as bonds that these investors buy. When you add all of those things up, all the mortgages, credit cards, auto loans, et cetera, in the world, you're talking a market that's trillions and trillions of dollars in magnitude. So our founder and CEO, he was a former bond trader. He lived and breathed through the global financial crisis, and coming out of that, knew there had to be a better way to work with all of this data. Investors are putting in millions, if not billions, in terms of these transactions, and they oftentimes have very limited data, if any data at all, to work with. So there's a real problem around transparency and accessibility there. And again, he just knew there had to be a better way to do this. Everything is done in Excel. It's using technology that's decades old at this point.
And I guess even like commingling sources so that you have a more breadth of data, right?
Yeah, that's another challenge as well in this space. So I'm sure a lot of people have seen or read the Big Short, which I think gives a good lens, an accessible lens into what happened, some of the finer details of the financial crisis.
So which character are you in the movie?
So we like to say that we are the good guys, so to speak, that would have prevented it all from happening.
Okay.
The vision of DVO1.
Basically, you would have seen this as a problem.
Investors would have had the data, and they would have known what they were getting into, seen some of the early warning signs, and then so we're to really boil it down, we're trying to prevent something like another global financial crisis, at least in the spaces that we operate from happening again.
No pink shades to quote Wall Street. Wall Street.
Yeah, no, thank you. I don't want that again. Although maybe for housing prices to fall.
Right, exactly.
Just joking. So about company size, where are you guys on? How long's the company been around? Employee count, maybe?
Yeah. So the company was founded at the end of 2014. So we're coming up on our 10-year anniversary now.
Congrats.
It's been an exciting ride. Company size, we're about 125, 130 people. That's kind of where we've been over the last few years, and I think that's where we'll stay for the short-term foreseeable future, at least. That's a good size for us right now. We were acquired at the end of 2022 by Fitch Solutions. So that's been an interesting new dynamic, really exciting, and it's been a good partnership for us for the last 18 months or so since that acquisition. So.
Okay, cool. And when did you join?
I was the company's first hire. So I joined right around the week of Thanksgiving in 2014. We had a co-founder that left shortly after I joined. The two of them had started officially in October, and then I joined about a month later in 2014. So
the jump.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna I was gonna ask you what your day-to-day today looks like, but it would be even more interesting to understand how it started and how that's kind of varied across the decade.
Yeah, so I right now I'm the vice president of operations. I think operations can mean a lot of different things at a lot of different companies. So our operations team, it's basically the analysts and the engineers that oversee all of the data on our platform. So data is basically our core product. Yes, we have a web application and other offerings built on top of that. But if we don't have cleansed, normalized, validated data, all of that other stuff is not as valuable. So our analysts, our engineers on the operations team are those subject matter experts that really own that data and make sure it's fit for purpose for everything else that we do with it, everything else that our clients do with it.
That's super helpful because you're right. I mean, my last company, the VP of operations was in charge of building the office spaces and stuff like that. So
I always just say that generic operations doesn't do it justice. It means something
That's
specific
why we
in our
ask.
space.
It's like I've learned in my career, title means nothing other than like how someone's going to find you on LinkedIn or something.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this particular group, I mean, we've had 7 or 8 different names over the years. It kind of evolves and changes as the business evolves. So we've had all different names, but been with the operations nomenclature now for a couple of years. So
all right, awesome.
that sticks.
Why don't we take like a journey through time and talk a little about like the beginning of your tech journey. I think something I found interesting getting to know you is that you originally started in finance, right? Your career?
Yeah. So I went to the University of Michigan, Go Blue, national champions 2023. Right. So I got to give a shout out.
The Wolverines,
Yeah, Wolverines. I actually didn't share this part earlier, but I guess I'll just throw it in there as another fun fact. I actually went as a music major. So I chose Michigan because, just in case I changed majors, I would have a lot to choose from rather than going to a conservatory.
Too, especially going into college.
Yeah. So I was a tuba performance major. Very small pool to find success in. So for a variety of reasons, I changed majors and did go into finance eventually. So coming out of school, I moved back to New York, took my first job at Ernst & Young. I was in the structured finance space, but on a very different side than our founder and CEO. So I was part of the team that was basically going through all the documents that supported these mortgages in these transactions, basically validating, yep, these are real mortgages. These details match what's going into the documents that the investors are looking at. So it's a type of auditing, basically. Yeah. But I was coming out of school in 2007, so the job I had interned at and that group didn't exist anymore. Everything had started falling apart at that point. So fortunately, they created a consulting advisory program, and the analysts that were coming into that group, worked on a number of different consulting projects. I kind of found my sweet spot in a lot of the regulatory requirements that came out of the financial crisis. So I started getting involved with building out different types of models. And that was really my first foray into anything technical. I mean, I'd like to say I was strong and proficient with something like Excel, but I started to get involved in programming in SAS and R.
That's cool.
And over the years, found that side of things more and more interesting than the actual.
And was that more? Would you say an operation of like just no one else there had those skills, and there was a task that needed to be done, or like? Ernst & Young, I would think of as like this big structured, if they wanted to focus on that, would they not just hire an engineer to build those models? Like, how did you get that opportunity?
It just seems organic in hindsight. I don't know if I just kind of started getting curious and started working with some of the other analysts that had those skill sets. And then I started kind of seeking those types of projects where I get to put those types of skills to use out. And then I got to a point, first that job had me traveling quite a bit. So I just hit my breaking point after 4 years on the road, decided to go basically do the same thing in-house, at a bank. And about a year and a half into that, decided I really wanted to make the jump and go head on into tech and change careers a bit.
That's cool. So just to recap a little, I think it's kind of both amusing and worth noting. You started as a tuba performance major, turned to finance and got a job at E&Y. I'm just thinking, like, as your parents or somebody, like, I went to college and I think my parents were like, oh no, this kid might like lose it with all this freedom. And sounds like you were like the dream of like,
I mean, they were supportive.
Organically evolving.
Yeah. I mean, my dad's an accountant. He's a CPA. He has his own practice. So there was a tie to the Ernst & Young path too, but they were supportive of the music side too. And they're supportive of, what I've been doing now. So I guess I'm lucky to have them back me in whatever I've decided to do and change and evolve into over the years.
I thought you were going to say you came from a family of tuba players.
Right. I'm trying to think of John Candy's band name in Home Alone.
Oh,
the polka.
They have tubas in polka, I guess.
They do, yeah.
Yeah. Well, another thing we sort of had in common, I played the baritone up until high school, and I had also been playing guitar, and I got kicked out of the band because I just didn't take it very seriously, and then solely focused on guitar and played guitar in like everything possible from even like the high school musicals. Yeah. I would just sit in with a guitar and like take the piano part and figure out what to play.
Yeah.
Like there's no guitar for like, My Fair Lady or whatever they were doing.
I don't think it's a coincidence that so many people in tech have like a very creative personal pursuit.
Totally
like,
agree.
For example, like speaking of arts and music, I was like a dancer. My like claim to fame is that I danced in the 2000 open ceremony of the Sydney Olympics.
It's so cool what you get to learn about people you think you know about in here, by the way. Yeah, I had no idea.
But there's a huge like component of creativity when you just think about tech and building and thinking of the next problem. So
I worked in music as a lawyer for a little bit, and that was like one thing I liked about both that and tech is I found in music, because I was there first, that like the creative side needs people who are better at the business side.
Right.
To think any one individual should know all these things that really have nothing to do with each other. And I really like that role. Like I could help these creative people make a living off of their art and also get the art to the world, which I thought was a good thing. And tech, I find very similar. They need us as attorneys to like help even just form the business or whatever, close deals. But I can't make this stuff, right? Just like when I was at the record label, I can't be Ed Sheeran. Yeah. But
I mean, I oftentimes wish I'd kind of done what you did, Jonathan, and go and like do coding boot camp. I feel like I could understand the language of my engineers or my internal customers so much more. But
yeah, it's definitely helped over the years. I mean, as I kind of go through my roles over the years at DVO1, the consulting piece definitely has served me really well. So I'm glad that I had that experience for the years that I was doing that at E&Y, certainly.
We're going to take a break to hear from one of our sponsors, but when we come back, we'll hear more about what an acquisition feels like from the inside of the acquired company, as well as Jonathan's journey into tech and how a popular game show played a major role.
This episode is brought to you by NextGen Law. NextGen Law supports today's modern tech companies, bringing expertise in drafting and negotiating customer contracts and scaling of go-to-market legal functions. For more information, visit nextgenlaw.com. That's NextGenLaw with hyphens in between each word.com.
All right, so we got a little off the timeline, but so now you're going, all right, I want to get into tech. Kieran had kind of alluded to, so you decided to do that. I'm going to learn about coding, right? So
I had been self-studying at home. The role that I was in, I was thankful to have a bit of a break and some breathing space. The office that I was at was literally a block away from my apartment, so I'd come home for lunch, spend an hour watching YouTube tutorials or go through the Harvard library of courses that they had up for free. So I was self-studying for a while until I got the confidence and conviction to say, okay, I'm going to really do this. I'm going to leave my job. So it didn't hurt that I had the good fortune, no pun intended, I guess, to to go on Wheel of Fortune. So I had gone out there over the summer of, I want to say 2013. Yeah, I think that's right. And filmed an episode, went to the final round, won the whole thing, won a car that I went and immediately sold because I lived in the city and I already didn't need a car.
I'm sure everyone wants to know, what kind of car was it?
It was a Kia. Or no, sorry, it was a Chevy Volt. It was like one of the earlier hybrid type cars. So
I don't know if those are around anymore.
I don't think so, but yeah. So went out there, and that was one of the things that enabled me to take a few months off. What was like the final puzzle you saw? What was the answer? Final puzzle was Jolly Good Fellow, and I remember driving from the airport to downtown LA. Saying what letters I would pick if I was going to go in. I picked G, D, O as my vowel.
Oh man!
So I had like the whole puzzle. It wasn't. I mean, when it was coming up, I was like, all right, I'm really going to win Wheel of Fortune right now. It's a surreal thing.
Was there like a logic to that, or kind of like as you were thinking about coding in boot camp, you were strategizing?
I watched the show growing up too. It was like, I'd love to be on any game show, but that one was the one that we sat and watched at dinner pretty much every night.
I have a theory about why it's so popular compared to others. Is like it's hard to be just naturally better at it. That like everyone has an equal chance. I feel
definitely has a lower bar to entry. I think
there's a lot of numbskulls that play that game.
Well, you have.
I didn't want to say that, but yeah. Versus like Jeopardy. Jeopardy's on right before it in most places.
You feel bad about yourself. So
oh my God. I've tried out for that show. If you want to feel stupid, definitely do that. You're like, I don't know anything about 18th century Danish.
To Be a Millionaire was really tricky too.
You tried out for that?
I mean, no, I didn't try out for any of them, but I just remember watching them going, yeah, I'd just be phoning a friend every game.
Yeah. I find anything with multiple choice I do better at. So right. I think I'd do okay on that. But anyway, all right. So that's cool. So Wheel of Fortune, I think the point of this is like, it gives you a little financial freedom to take a risk.
I'm going to leave my job with no income stream for some amount of time. So yeah, I went to, I wanted to take the self-study side of what I had been focusing on the tech side, teaching myself to program. And there were a lot of different coding boot camps popping up at that time.
And this was 2014 around?
Yeah, about early 2014 at this point. So I looked at one in New York, I looked at one in San Francisco, I looked at one in Austin, ultimately decided to go with the one in San Francisco. I was a little burnt out of New York at that point and thought, that's the mecca of US-based tech. So I'm going to go to San Francisco. And at that point was thinking, if I get the right opportunity or I like it out there, I'm going to stay out there. I might not come back to New York. So went out there. The program was great. I mean, it was right across the street from the school, and I was there, I want to say 7 a.m. till 11 o'clock at night, basically.
Sounds like law school.
And were your fellow boot campers or students kind of also like you?
Yeah. It was a really ambitious group of individuals coming from all different places, backgrounds. It was a really great program. Met lots of great people. Still in touch with a lot of them today. And there's a good contingent that made their way out to New York, either right after or eventually over the years. But yeah, I mean, basically heads down, immersed in programming for 4 months straight. And over time, over the course of the program, I got a little homesick. I was surprised, but ultimately decided that I was going to come back to New York, and that's what I
So you didn't come here because you got a job here. You came here to find...
I came back and decided that step first before I really started the search.
Were you going, or did you feel like you were going against the grain at all at that time? I mean, because the West Coast was still probably just such a huge hub.
Yeah, I mean, New York still had a bunch of presence, fashion, media, finance, even though I vowed that I probably wouldn't come back to finance. Obviously, I didn't stay true to that promise, but...
my best career decisions are all things that I thought I'd never do.
Right.
So, no, I didn't feel like I was going against the grain, and honestly, in the moment, I was living like day to day, basically, saying, now I'm going to put my resume together, put my portfolio together, send it out there to a bunch of places. So
did it feel like starting over, or did it feel like you added to like a previous skill set?
It definitely felt like at that time that I was starting over, because I mean, I sat in my apartment and I just sent resumes out the door.
I went back to law school similarly, like switched careers, went to law school, and then like it totally felt, that was maybe the weirdest part, is I just did this program that changed my life, and like I know I'm different. I feel like a better version or whatever, but I got to start this new thing at the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's one thing to go to a program and, you know, build your skill sets. It's another thing to actually get a job and use them. So, you know, there's a little bit of imposter syndrome. There's a lot of humility and vulnerability there. I mean, I sent my information out to literally hundreds. The number of phone screens is far lower number than that. And then in-person interviews.
Do you feel like those companies at the time, because I think the ethos around this has shifted, but were they not looking at the boot camp as valuable as, say, like a 4-year college degree in computer engineering, and like that's your competition, or was it just like the market in general?
Yeah, I definitely think there's a little bit of a stigma around the boot camps. You know, I think I tried to play into that a little bit with your other background. Yeah. Well, I mean that I had working experience, and but I think also the fact that, look, I left my job, I went to this program, I'm committed, I'm you know, passionate about this as a new start. Like I leverage that to really indicate, like, I may not have everything else that somebody else has, but you won't find somebody that's going to work harder than I'm going to coming into this.
The reason I brought it up is I found, like, years later anyway, I wasn't really working in tech or had the insight anyway back then, but I feel later on that it shifted to, like, those, to your point, those are the people you want to go after at a tech company. They've probably had some other real life experience, dedicated themselves to this, and are ready for like the on the job training part. I mean, at Datadog, like that was like a perfect profile for what we called like solution engineers. So the people that would help clients with issues and whatnot was, you know, a different background than just computer engineering, but under, you know, having that under, and then from that department, people would branch out into all over in the company.
Yeah, and that's something we still use, or I use a lot in my hiring strategy today, because it's an intangible sort of element that it's hard to screen for, but you also kind of know it when you see it. Some 100%. Of the best people that I've brought on, or the company has brought on, have had that sort of mentality where they're maybe not the most qualified person on paper based on their pure achievements and skills, but there's something about that goes beyond that. You know, that specific type of experience, and allows for them to really excel in the different types of roles that we have.
Some people call it hunger, some people call it X factor, like, but you know it when you see it. Yeah,
I mean, that's how you learn, that's how you grow, and quite honestly, you don't have a choice when there's 4 of you sitting around at 11 o'clock at night figuring out a problem you have to have solved by the morning.
I'd love to take it back to like the origin story of DB01 though, and like thinking about what made you stand out, like, and how they saw that in you, or like how they were even the right fit for you, even kind of, what was the other side of that?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously I did not hold true to these 2 principles, but when I was looking for, my first role after the boot camp, I was very open-minded, but I wanted somewhere that was going to give me a somewhat formal mentorship opportunity. Right. You know, coming into this new, I want to make sure that I'm, you know, in the right spot to learn and grow my skills. And then the second point was that I wanted to stay outside of finance. I did not want to get back into the financial services industry again. So obviously that didn't pan out in either way, and I went against both of those principles by being the first non-founding hire at a financial services focused startup.
So just kind of to pile on that a little bit. Like, why did you set those rules? Like, what didn't you, right? Because like, it's probably not true when you think about it now. It's not that you didn't want to work anything to do with finance. There's something more specific in your experience that you probably, right?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't want to be in a big corporation. I didn't want a lot of red tape and bureaucracy and corporate politics. So in hindsight, yeah, I could say it wasn't necessarily finance. It was more the big corporation roles that I had in the past. Yeah, I mean, the interview, if I can call it that, the first one at least, was just a lunch with the two founders. Our founder that's still on and CEO now. He just walked through the vision and it really resonated with me. I mean, I could say, yeah, I did a bunch of this stuff in Excel too. And
so like the problem he was solving resonated with.
Exactly. Yeah. And then instead of a technical interview coding challenge type thing, we came to an arrangement where I said, you know what, I'll just work for a couple days. I think it was the week of Thanksgiving and I was home at my parents and just spun up a Zoom session and pair programs for a couple days with the other founder who was the more technical of the two. So sort of got a feel for what it would be like working day in and day out with him. Had a good experience there and the rest is history now at this point. So the vision, I felt like I was getting that mentorship hands-on because I was literally the only other person that was going to be programming with the technical founder. And I figured, why not? I've already done enough crazy things in 2014. I'm going to do another one.
Do you think part of you was attracted that it was like the total opposite of like an Ernst & Young? They're like the two guys, I'd be their first employee, you know?
I think it was a little naive going into it. I didn't anticipate all of the different things that I would have to learn how to do over there. And that's not a bad thing in hindsight. I think I just was naive thinking I'd just be there coding away. And, the role, especially how it's evolved over the years has been a lot more than just that.
What was your like first title? So you're the first hire?
I was just a product engineer. So I was working on the very early stages of the web application that we had. And at that point, we did not have a single client. We had relationships and prospects, but we were basically just going off some publicly available data, prototyping everything that we had from our ETL process, our data pipeline, as well as the actual interface that our eventual customers would interact with that data in.
That's cool. And so we know you were acquired, or the company was acquired later. At that point, I actually haven't even asked you this. Do you know like was it a venture-backed company? Like, was it bootstrapped?
Yeah, so we had I'm trying to think of the sequencing of everything. We had one seed investor, and then had a friends and family small round, and then eventually had a few partners that invested capital over the years. So a pretty small group.
And that was all like after you joined, pretty much?
Yeah, I mean, we had, I think the seed investment was at least arranged, if not
finalized.
That's
probably how they got to hire you.
Yeah. But yeah, most of that.
That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, I got a lot of hands-on experience during the diligence process for the acquisition. In the earlier days, I didn't have as much involvement with some of the financing conversations.
That was one thing I like missed out on at Datadog. I joined right after they raised their Series D. And they never raised more money really until we were heading towards the public markets. So it's interesting now as I'm working with a lot earlier stage companies and seeing how that affects like their growth trajectory and even the products they can offer.
What does like on a high level, like the audition aspect of getting funding look like?
To me?
Like,
I don't know.
Well, probably more for Jonathan, like in your experience, and what is the difference between when you're doing it? Obviously, there's a big one between Series A and Series F if you get to it, but like, what does that kind of initial waltz look like when you're trying to
Yeah, like I said, I don't know for some of the earlier conversations in terms of the earlier rounds of things. I mean, all I know is there's a deck, a pitch, and hopefully some good conversations after that. The acquisition process was interesting. Getting to go through that with a couple of different counterparties. My role in that was really sort of the hands-on product demo. So I basically walked everybody through, what DVO1 does. Here's the tangible, living, breathing web application that all of our clients use, and really tying that back to our overall mission and vision around data accessibility, data transparency. Lots of meetings, lots of decks.
Yeah. And in terms of even showing them like your deal book or your like clientele, I mean, at the time that you were being acquired, was it like very developed? Was it just like enough proof of concept?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very niche space that we operate in. So all of the companies that we were, speaking with, and eventually with Fitch Solutions, there was a lot of overlap there. So there was only a handful of counterparties that probably make sense to even consider
now,
in terms of an acquisition. So
do you get the sense they were looking at you to add you to like a portfolio of products, like a value add? Or are they looking to, like, are they competing with you? And this is a way of consolidating that, right? Because acquisition can happen for a number of different reasons.
Yeah, there's a few different dimensions. First and foremost, they believe in our longer term trajectory, our growth, our vision, and invested in us for that specific reason. They do have a portfolio of other companies that sort of round out a portfolio of products that have synergies with one another. So we're working with another part of the broader business, the Fitch business, to roll out some new products that are basically partnerships between the two sides. So it was definitely an investment and a belief in sort of our longer term vision, but there are certainly synergies. Again, it's only so large of a space. So, there's a lot of overlap with what other portfolio companies, other parts of the business are doing. And we've already started to, partner on some of those efforts.
Yeah, it was interesting for me at a Datadog was like, I never did the M&A deal, but I was the attorney once we acquired a company. Okay, figure out what they actually do and how they're integrating to the product and stuff. From the attorney point of view, obviously the people who decided to buy it knew what was going on. So we definitely had I'd say, buy versus build mentality as a way to get these things to market faster. So like you guys get acquired, and now you're helping them kind of, right, like understand your guys' business, how it fits into the bigger business.
Yeah. But I think one of the things that we really felt strongly around when the acquisition was ultimately getting close to being finalized, Fitch Solutions was very upfront with us about keeping us independent, letting us work the way that we worked. A big sticking point in the negotiations was the fact that we would be, and are now, the only fully remote company in their portfolio. It's those types of things that are really strong, really important to us in our culture. So, those sorts of intangibles, things you can't get if you built it yourself. I think that is a big part of why they have stayed true to that word. You ask 90% of the company.
It's a marriage, really.
Yeah, you ask 90% of the company, and they would say it's pretty much the same as it was 18 months ago. We're really happy with the partnership that we have there. For me personally, it's given me some new avenues and opportunities to get more involved with different parts of the business, which has been exciting. But again, in terms of the broader how we operated before the acquisition versus today, it's largely unchanged. And I think that's a testament to how much they believe in our longer term vision and ability to keep scaling the business.
So we kind of spoke about this, when preparing for the pod. I think the audience would be interested in like the company morale around an event like that. What was it like around the office when you're getting acquired?
Yeah. So we, like I just said, we are a fully remote company. After COVID hit, we never went back. We broke our lease. We, now I think are about a 50-50 split in terms of people that are New York Metro based versus people that are everywhere else. We did our first company retreat. It was the first time in 2 years that everybody was getting together and seeing each other, or meeting all of the new faces, the remote employees for the first time. And there were mixed opinions, to say the least, as to whether the dinner at the first night of the retreat was the right time to announce the acquisition. That is ultimately what we did. But yeah, I mean, it was a kind of stressful time. Somebody that was on the inside knew this was happening for months and months.
Right.
On one side, it was great that we could finally get it off our chest and it was out in the open. But yeah, the morale was a big concern. How are people going to react? You had a lot of people that had been through maybe less favorable circumstances when it came to other mergers and acquisitions that they had been a part
100%,
of. And there was definitely some skepticism in the group from people that had some of that experience around, when you say nothing's going to change, something is going to change. And then you have a lot of other employees that, like myself, just hadn't had the experience. So who knows? You gotta wait and see. But I think it was interesting. The messaging to start was nothing is going to change. And that was sort of the reassurance, but that slowly evolved in a way that I think is interesting looking back on, to be nothing will change in a negative way.
Right. Of
but,
course.
There are things like, we have this partner behind us now. We never have to worry about going out and raising money again, or the longevity and stability of the business. Sure. So it was interesting to see how that narrative went from everything is going to stay the same to it's, all of the day-to-day stuff, how the teams are operating, that's not going to change. But now, we have these new opportunities, this new partner to really start achieving the next level of growth.
And it's funny too. It's like the message is because people are worried about things are going to change for the negative, right? Like you're trying to kind of get on the offensive about that.
Yeah.
And that remote aspect is huge. Like, I'm going to date myself, but I remember being a deal M&A lawyer many moons ago. And I mean, it was a different time. It was obviously pre-COVID, but never would you have seen a contingency in an agreement of like, the entire workforce stays remote.
Right.
It's so unusual, and obviously not so much.
It's actually like you look forward to in an acquisition. You're like, and we get better offices and resources. And Bulls now, it's like late stage, early stage.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a number of people or a number of years or some other milestone, but I would say.
I feel like just in general, if the company's doing like $100 million in revenue or even like ARR or whatever, like you're not a startup.
Yeah.
You're past that like proof of concept stage for sure. And now it's like, how big of a company are you going to be? I think in tech, the reason we still use that phrase is I think to Kieran's point is that the only thing we agree on is that you're not done yet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're still looking to get bigger. You're looking for that acquisition or IPO or right. The whoever funded this wants their money back somehow.
Yeah. It's more of a mentality and culture thing though. There's that hunger, there's that drive, there's that scrappiness that we still want to impart and
100%. Do you guys feel like a startup still?
Yeah, we definitely feel like that.
I think 100 people, it's like for sure.
And that's so interesting because it's 10 years old.
Yeah, well, it's crazy to say it's almost 10 years, but still very much feels like that. And I think that's a good thing. So
we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll hear about how DVO1 separated itself from its competitors, Jonathan's favorite aspects of NYC, and even some inside tea about Wheel of Fortune. So in the spirit of this podcast, as we like to champion the efforts of our peers and colleagues, I wanted to tell the audience that our co-host Kieran Bath is also a newly published poet. Kieran's debut poetry collection, Instructions for Bano, travels through the timelines and geographies of the women in her family to understand the inherited consequences of becoming a South Asian bride. The collection beautifully addresses how to be part of a family and also one's own person. We couldn't be more proud. More information and a link to purchase your own copy can be found in the show notes of this episode. One other thing we had talked about was, which I find interesting, is so you're in a market that is providing kind of like cutting edge technology. Like a lot of the stuff you're doing wasn't done 5-10 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. But this is just my experiences, like financial markets and technology don't move at the same pace. So like, can you speak to maybe some of the challenges you guys have building in a space that is kind of, for lack of a better word, like slow to adapt to more modern technology?
Yeah, it's been interesting to see over the years, and it's certainly evolved. I think there's a lot more openness and comfort with things today versus 10 years ago. Talking about doing anything in the cloud 10 years ago would have raised all sorts of alarms and whatnot at the vendor management and procurement teams, at all the institutions that we deal with as clients. But, I think slowly but surely a lot of clients are coming around to that. Maybe some of the larger historical type institutions are a little slower to evolve, but we also have a lot of smaller clients, a lot of smaller asset managers, hedge funds that are a bit more forward thinking when it comes to technology. So, in the early days, we would have questions around us coming and installing a local version on, analysts' computers. And now more or less everybody is comfortable with a fully cloud-based setup. A lot of their other vendors are moving in the same direction. So,
what about on the data side though? Like, are they hesitant to share data, like the sources you need to pull from? Are they even unified as to format and connecting to them?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of unified format and whatnot, not at all. I mean, that's one of our biggest value propositions, that we have the technology to take all this disparate data and basically put it all into a standardized format. So, we're getting data tapes from dozens and dozens of different counterparties, and then basically presenting that in a way where it's all apples to apples. So you don't have to do the mental math of saying, okay, it's coming from data source A, so this data field means this, but if it's from data source B, it means something different. All of that is done for you, so it's plug in.
Is your offering built into ETL, or is that something the client needs to provide to get it to?
No, I mean, we are basically doing the ETL, or now as we evolve, we're moving more toward an ELT framework. But I mean, that data transformation essentially is a core part of what we are doing. I mean, they're basically giving us a dump from their file system or whatever it may be.
Super raw data.
Yeah. And we are taking, that, and then, another package, and then making it all look the same, making sure there's no errors, running through it all of our QC processes. So, I mean, the alternative for our clients would be to invest in some sort of technology, an engineering team, do all that in-house. And why do that when you can come to DV01 and
100%.
Basically buy that data that's already gone through all of that? We're going to do it better than they would probably do it. And it would take a lot
so
more
you already
time
have it all. You're not saying we need to get it from your sources.
It really depends. I mean, we are onboarding new data sources all of the time. So they may have
access to something
5 different feeds that we have. We only have 4 of those. We'll onboard the 5th one and bring that through our whole process.
And what does the competitive landscape look like then? I mean, it seems like you guys are almost a maverick in the space, or
in the earlier days, there were a couple similar companies that were largely trying to do the same thing. We all had different sort of specializations, but those early days competitors have largely died out at this point. There are very large institutions, Bloomberg, Intex, that that they're industry names for decades at this point. We don't consider them to be true competitors. They have tools that support parts of what we do. So we try to focus on a truly end-to-end solution for investors in the space where, Intex, for instance, only focuses on running predictive cash flow modeling and some other parts of the workflow. So in terms of competitive landscape, there's not really anyone that's trying to do exactly what we're doing. There are other adjacent parts of the workflow that our clients may choose to supplement using DVO1. But yeah, it's an interesting space because there's, at least right now, no real true competitor that is trying to do all of the things that
was
we
there
do.
Something you guys, like, in your opinion, or maybe stronger than that you guys did differently from your competitors that you're still around and they're not? Or that even just won out the market?
Yeah, I think our focus on data was really the differentiator. We became the name in the space for quality data, and that's hard to come by. It takes a lot of work. It's an underappreciated thing, but once you have a client that really starts to rely on that, because it's such a small space, there's a large advocacy and network effect too, where a client may say, hey, we want to start looking at data from this other source. Are they on DVO1? We say no. Then they'll go and they'll ask that other counterparty and say, hey, we use DVO1 for X, Y, and Z. We now want to see your data on the platform. So it's a bit of a self-fulfilling. Yeah. So I think it just came back to the data as hard as that is to make a tangible thing. You can ask our sales folks about the challenges sometimes of saying that data as our quality product is it's not as sexy as showing an actual product. We have a great web application which certainly helps, but yeah, at the end of the day, it's the data.
So there are a few questions now we like to ask kind of every guest. How do you see the role of luck playing into either your own journey or the company's success?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a right place, right time dimension of the success of the company. So when we started, there was a fairly new type of product that was coming to market, or it evolved into a new form. So I don't know if you're familiar with SoFi, Lending Club, Upstart, these online loan originators that largely focus. Loans, so I know SoFi especially then. They were just starting to gain traction with these institutional investors, where they were making loans to millions of people, and institutional investors. It was starting to get to enough scale where they could actually invest in the space with the capital that they had. There was no data ecosystem whatsoever there, and that was right when we were getting started. So we got in at the ground floor for that particular type of product, and really were able to make a name for ourselves that then we were able to start replicating in other product types, so mortgages, student loans, autos, etc. So I think that right place, right time dimension is a variation of luck there. And then for me personally, I mean, I was on a game show and I won. I mean, if that's not lucky, then I don't know what else to say there.
How can you Wheel of Fortune has to play.
No, definitely.
So I mentioned also there was a question I wanted to ask you about Wheel of Fortune that I said I didn't want you to be prepared for.
Okay.
Not that big a deal. I'm always curious, do you still have the name tag from the show? And I feel like I would have it framed. You know what I mean?
That's a good question. I don't think I got to take it.
No? What's your memorabilia? You don't have the car? What do you have?
I don't have the car. No, that's a good question. I don't know if I have any memorabilia.
No?
Do we have the tape? Can we run the tape back somewhere?
There was a YouTube link, and for years I was saying, I gotta pull this off just in case. And then last time I went to look, it wasn't active. So there are snippets here and there. A little bit of diehard trivia or interesting facts too. So there is a Wheel of Fortune message board that there are
group?
more like fans of the show that will critique every single episode. And one of
is undefeated.
Yeah, one of the contestants I played against went on there, and she bashed me a little bit.
Oh no!
She said I didn't deserve to win. And
if you don't have haters, you're not trying hard enough. You know?
So
what was the critique though? What was the?
She just I don't know. She just said
I spun the wheel too hard. Like
I just didn't deserve to win for whatever reason. No, but memorabilia wise, I don't think I have anything actually.
Well, our listeners should definitely just YouTube Jonathan Warrick.
I know.
Pat Sajak, if you're listening,
yeah,
send them. Something.
My mom, I think she might have it like on DVR still. So next time I'm over there, I'm just gonna have to sit with my phone and record it.
How satisfying is it just to swing that wheel?
It's
I
heavy.
know,
It's
I
big.
too.
It's heavy.
It's heavy,
Yeah,
okay.
it's deceivingly heavy. So that's
Did you win any vacations on it?
no, that was the one thing.
It's funny. When I was younger, I thought those were like the coolest prize, and now I'm like, I want someone.
Yeah,
to
exactly.
go and
Yeah.
like on a budget.
I
or
overlook
whatever.
the luggage goods every time. I'm like, oh, not the luggage. But I'm like, you know what? Very nice.
A nice set would be helpful. Yeah. So the other question we like to ask is like,
And this
so
should
you-
be an easy one. Given.
yeah, you're from the New York area, right? You grew up around here, but like, what's one of your, like either your favorite aspects of the city or favorite places?
Yeah, I mean, talked a bit throughout about music on all sides here. I just love the variety of venues. There's always music. I made a commitment last year to go to more shows than I had in years past. I think I ended the year with like 35 or so.
In the year?
Yeah.
Good for you.
Incredible.
Ask
What
my
was
wife
like
if she was
a
happy
new
about
artist that you discovered last year?
There is this group of 3 women called Truesdale. I saw them open up for a show I saw at the Beacon, and then they played at the Mercury Lounge, I want to say, where
Okay.
it was like the first concert in a long time that I'd gone up, and I was like front row, and
Yeah.
they're kind of
3 tuba
like-
players? What
no, not 3 tuba players. I like to say maybe like if you took Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young and you made it a younger female group, like super
cool.
tight harmonies,
Nice.
little rock, a little country, a little folksy, but yeah.
Tell you what venue I don't like. I braved myself to join all the Gen Zs and watch Steve Lacy at Terminal 5 last year. I mean, great new artist, but I really detest that.
I'm going to
venue.
date myself. I can't go there and not think of it as Carbon Nightclub or whatever.
Club Exit.
Oh,
back
wow,
in the
yeah.
day.
Was it an exit?
Before Carbon, yeah, it was Exit. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was just Exit. It's just, I get all these flashbacks to like when I was like a little raver. Do
Okay.
you still play at all?
I don't play tuba. I did just so I moved to New Jersey 8 months ago at this point. And a friend out there introduced me to another guy, and we're doing a dad band now.
Nice.
So
Nice.
yeah, we
So
just
what do you-
started
what
playing. I
instrument
play
are you
bass
playing?
in that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, slap in the bass.
Yeah, there's a saying that like you'll never be an out of work bass player because they're hard to come by.
Yeah. It's been fun. It's been good to like get back into a routine. We've got a show for one of the local
Is that right?
parent organizations raising money. So
That's
it's like
awesome.
true
That's amazing,
suburban dad, type band. But it's been fun. So yeah, I get to play a little bit.
All right, well, dude, thank you so much for coming
Yeah,
in.
it was fun.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode.
It's a wrap.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Empire State of Grind. As always, I'm your host, Aaron Fisher. I'm joined by my esteemed co-host, Kieran Bath, and special thanks to our producer, Brian Neiman. We'll be back with new episodes twice a month. Please like, subscribe, and leave us some comments. And as we say in New York, we out.